You know, you look like you're in a fashion shoot for a
I
wedding.
know, right? All the way. Really, I swear I didn't plan it. Either that or a funeral or something in some cultures, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have my bright pink phone here. That'll bow on my red notebook. There, now
Oh, that's better. Yeah, that's much better.
I swear I don't live in an all white world.
Well, thank you for doing this.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of my favorite things getting to talk about, you know, bookstores and books and Powell's. And so I'm delighted to have the invitation. Thanks for reaching out.
Well, I've been doing this for about 10 years, traveling around the world talking to booksellers and
That's not a bad
publishers.
gig.
It doesn't pay that well, but you're
No.
right. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, it
Yeah.
seems to be the way the world works. The things that pay well aren't so gratifying, and the reverse is more true. Talking to all of us as we're grappling with all of us booksellers as we're grappling with this strange time.
I've tended to steer away from that actually. Everyone else tends to be doing it. Mine is more of a project. I don't know if you've heard of the book historian Robert Darnton.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So I didn't even know I was following his approach, but I was, and that is to try and get a complete picture of everyone that's connected to the book and all their different roles. And I'm shooting for best practitioners.
Okay.
I'm just very glad to be able to talk to you as a third generation bookseller. In fact, just about a month ago, I was in the south of France talking to another third generation
Oh,
bookseller.
really? Who is that?
His name is Bill Samuel,
Okay.
and he's the grandson of William Foyle of Foyles in London.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
We should form a little club or something.
Well, there's also Nancy Bass Wyden, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we're in touch. And she's married to the Oregon senator, so we have some other connections as well.
Oh, yes, of course. I didn't realize that.
They had one of their wedding ceremonies in our rare book room, which was pretty fun.
Well, they got married quite a while back, though, right?
I mean, it wasn't as a while back as you'd think. I moved back to Portland in 2004, so it was between then and now, and I know so maybe 10 years ago, around then.
Later in life, then.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to start off by introducing you. Okay, ready?
I'm ready.
Emily Powell is the owner of Powell's Bookstore in Portland, Oregon. Welcome to the Bibliophile.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a real treat for me to be here.
Now, you came on the radar. Well, you've always been on the radar, but you really came on the news radar when you decided to dump Amazon.
Yes. Yes, we got a little attention for that this summer. That's right. We've been a long time partner of theirs on the Amazon Marketplace platform. In fact, it's a little known point of history that Marketplace was actually originally built for Powell's. We were their first reseller, and our inventory was too large for the system they had at the time, and so they built something to accommodate. And I don't know that I should be waving that news from any mountaintops, but we've been with them from the beginning is more the point. And over time, we realized that was increasingly not a good choice for our business or for independent businesses at large or for the book business. And so we decided to cut ourselves off this summer.
Okay, so why specifically is it not a good idea?
Well, there are quite a few reasons. For us as a business, it's an expensive form of getting customers. First of all, they'll never be our customers. They're always Amazon customers. They're most loyal to Amazon. And we have to put quite a bit of labor into providing the support and service for that channel, that sales channel, that we wouldn't have to do for our customers, which means in our world, our direct-to-consumer world, we can dedicate our resources to being Powell's and to offering a Powell's level of service and interaction. Amazon doesn't want that, of course. They want us to be part of their business, really, which means you don't get the full Powell's experience, but more importantly, it costs us quite a bit more to provide a lower level of experience.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, they charge a substantial commission for being on their platform, which of course makes sense. They're offering a technology that we don't have ourselves.
They're offering a reach, I guess. Is that it? A
Offering
reach?
a reach, that's right. Yeah. And otherwise, then the books have to go into a box that's not labeled with anything that says Powell's. We can't provide any materials that say Powell's. So we've done quite a bit of work to provide the inventory to these customers, but then we can't, acknowledge that work or create a relationship with the customer. And again, I understand why Amazon has set this business up in that way. It just doesn't mean it works for us in the long run. So it's a costly way of adding sales to our business. We'd always been quite attached to it because, frankly, the book business is just a very hard business to be in. And anytime you can find another revenue stream, you're pretty happy to do so and hold on to it. But over time, if that revenue stream is actually more and more painful to your business, at some point you sort of have to say, this is not worth the cost. Now, that's a very difficult choice to make, especially in this year when we've lost, the vast majority of our sales. But it seemed like the best time in many ways to start from scratch, so to speak, to build a foundation for our business that would be more sustainable in the long run. So we made the choice to go ahead and stop selling with them.
So in other words, they're benefiting from all of primarily the quick turnaround that you provide to the end user. That's one big one, right?
I would say they insist on a quick turnaround. Those are parts of the terms of an agreement with them. So, sometimes we're not so fast. I'll be perfectly honest. There are ways in which we slip up or it takes us longer. I would say mostly what they're benefiting from is our work as inventory selectors. We're very good at finding the books we think our customers want, and Amazon isn't as good at that. That is not their primary focus. So they want the inventory we've found in the world at large, and they want to take a piece of that cut, which again, that's their business model. I don't particularly critique them for that. I do think they've had an outsized impact on local business communities, and that's the area where we really had to sort of draw a line eventually in our history with them, in that more and more the future of the vitality of our local communities, I believe, depends on local business being able to thrive. And if any longer, as we're in our homes, we don't go to our local businesses to meet our needs, then those communities don't have the tax base they need, the schools don't have the support from businesses that support the local baseball tournament, et cetera, et cetera. We see that in Portland, which is a city very much built on the notion that a walkable community creates a thriving community, and walkable usually means that there is retail or coffee shop or restaurants or art galleries on the ground floor of most buildings. But again, if there aren't businesses to occupy those buildings because the UPS truck is the primary deliverer of goods, then our city takes on a very different form and function, and it starts to lose its health over time. So we made this for our own well-being, but also for that of ours and other local communities where we are increasingly very concerned to see small businesses struggling as a result of Amazon.
Yeah, and government has seen the wisdom of that in France, haven't they? I wonder, has Portland seen the wisdom of that in Portland, the city of Portland?
I think Portland, we're rightfully very proud of our city, but no, I don't think that our city has yet grappled with this impact from Amazon. And my fear is that really that impact won't be truly felt for another 5 or 10 years, but by then we will be well past the point at which we can make the impact, to balance it out that we need to. At the moment, I think we're all, as communities and local governments, struggling to find the tax revenue that's needed to pay for local services, which I understand, and more it's businesses that are being asked to pay that. And I think that there's a breaking point coming, before too long.
It's also a lifestyle too, isn't it? It's great to have your bookstores. I wish we had something like your fantastic bookstores in our city.
I think that's right. It's really a tremendous, and I'm of course proud, and I've had the great fortune of growing up at Powell's, but nonetheless, every time I walk into our store, and I'm speaking particularly, of course, about the largest one downtown, but our other stores as well, There's
Yeah.
really something unpredictable and unexpected and magical that happens when you find yourself surrounded by these sort of canyons of books about subjects that interest you in a depth that you would never expect to find. And no discredit to libraries, but there are very few that have that scale, or that are, of course, thinking of merchandising in the way that is our, our task on a daily
Yeah.
basis. As my grandfather said, our job is to connect the writer's hand with the reader's ear and not let our ego get caught in the middle. If we do that well, then you should have a pretty remarkable experience that you're not going to have elsewhere. So I agree, it's a part of the cultural fabric of Portland, and as are other businesses here, and without them, it would be a very sad place.
Well, you're a tourist destination. You're helping big time on the tourism front.
That's true. That's true. At some point, this was a very out of date data point, but I was told we were number 3 as the largest tourist destination in the state of Oregon, behind Multnomah Falls and the Tillamook Cheese Factory, which I figure I can't compete with Natural Wonders or cheese, but that's all right. I'll take third place.
Cheese and chocolate, I guess.
Well, and they give free samples of ice cream at the end of the Cheese Factory tour, so I can't compete with that.
Before we leave Amazon,
Sure.
you said that you bring something to them that they don't have. Is it the titles of all of the books that you have that no one else has? So shoppers through Amazon have got a way better selection because of you? Is that point you're making?
In the internet age, of course, it's hard to find anything that there is only one of. So I can't claim that we are the only people to have the vast majority of our inventory, but we do have quite a unique selection. And Amazon is based on algorithms, and they're proud of that, and they have good reason to be proud of that. And at the same time, we are not. We're based on many algorithms for sure. We aren't technology averse, but at the end of the day, when it comes to buying really unique material, it takes eyes and the brain to look at this. My dad's doing this today as we speak, and he has another plan tomorrow. He goes out and buys large collections from people's homes, basements, libraries that are downsizing, and you have to be able to look at those books because there isn't a lot of data about them, and make an educated guess. And there's an art to that has to be connected to the science of bookselling, and that's not a world Amazon lives in. And so that's what they're getting from us, and I think from there are many other secondhand booksellers on Amazon, and I believe in many cases that's what they bring. And so it's a smart choice on Amazon's part. It's just not smart on our part any longer. Yeah.
That's the fun part, going out and looking at all those fantastic libraries and buying them, right?
That's right. And you never know what you're going to get. You never know if you're going to end up looking at aisles and aisles of jazzercise books from the 80s, or you're going to find some real gems hidden in there. And that is absolutely the fun part. One of the many fun parts.
Yeah, the whole treasure hunt. That's the thing, is the treasure hunt for the collector. And boy, there's a lot of stuff to go through in Portland.
That's right. Although I would add a tweak to that statement, and then I think that for us, one of the things that makes Powell stand out is we find real delight in finding those books, but we find equal delight in sending them out to their next owner. The experience of having someone look at something that you've found and you can put in their hand is pretty wonderful. And we all, as booksellers at Powell's, have stories about this one book of Czech poetry or something had been sitting on our shelf for 10 years, and as a business person that makes me cringe, but the one person who walks in that day and says, I've been looking for this my whole life, well, wow, that's what we get up for every day.
Yeah I did a check. There's another service, and my question is, and the service is called biblio.com. It's a small independent company, but it's growing. Yes. And it is offering an alternative to Abe and Amazon. So are you objecting to that whole concept? Or are you objecting to Amazon per se because it's got like 70% of the market or whatever?
Yeah, I'm not objecting to the concept, although the concept would have to be one that would work for our business, and Amazon's increasingly was simply too costly and burdensome, but also problematic for our community and business environment at large. In general, as long as it's something that small businesses can find an aid to their success, I am all for it. That being said, us, it's very complex too. Our inventory is so large. Our database is very complex in that every individual used book we've ever had has its own SKU, which is sort of mind-boggling because think about every copy of Romeo and Juliet we might have sold since 1994, which is when we first went online. And that's because each one had its own story, its own moment in time for what it was worth at that time, its own condition, its own placement in the company. But that database, it doesn't interact easily or in a very friendly manner with other sites. So if we're going to invest in a partnership, it has to be really worth it. So I don't expect we would do that going forward unless something sort of groundbreaking came along.
Yeah, I mean, these services, they're almost like having another salesman for you, and you got to look at the percentage that you're paying that salesman, right?
So I think if you're maybe a smaller business and you know your foot traffic and you know your online sales, it's a great option to add another avenue, and it's worth paying a commission because you wouldn't get those sales otherwise. And you could determine which inventory you list based on, well, I don't want to, if my customers who walk in the door want X, I don't want to take that away from them. So you can make your choices. For us, that's just, sort of mind-bogglingly complex.
Right. Okay. So what percentage of sales did Amazon represent for you?
It would fluctuate. I would say it was increasingly, could have been up to half of our online sales, which is, I don't like to be in a world in which, the leg under my table, one of them's getting larger and another's getting smaller. That's not a good business choice either. So.
Now, what about the percentage of used versus new? What's that like for you?
It pretty much always hovers around 50-50. Now there's a sliver of inventory in the middle that are our remainder titles and our gift items and, stationery and all that. So it's probably more accurate to say 40-40 or 45-45.
Yeah.
Typically what we've found historically is that when there's an economic recession, our used books do better and our new books do worse. But in the last recession, that actually flipped. So just having that more or less even split has allowed us to be a lot more resilient as a business over the years.
It's funny. We were talking briefly about Foyles in London, and they started off as a used bookstore. Mm-hmm. And that's how they made a lot of money in the first 10, 15 years. Mm-hmm. And you look at the Strand, and they're the only ones that are still standing, and they're used and new. Yeah. And one of my favorite bookstores in Minneapolis, Majors and Quinn, they do that as well. Yeah. So I wonder why more people don't do that.
It's been a sort of befuddling question to us for years. Of course, we started as a used bookstore. That was my father's focus. My grandfather, actually, when he came on after my father, he brought in the new inventory. He wasn't a book person. He wasn't a bookseller. And he saw his customers walking out the door to go buy new books at the new bookstore in the neighborhood. And he thought, well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. My dad thought it was crazy because he thought, you don't want to get into the new book business. The margins are terrible. The publishers will control you, whatever. But it was the smartest thing we ever did as a business, to put new and used together on the shelf. It allows customers to take a risk and try something and then come back. So I think we wouldn't sell as many new books if we didn't sell as many used books as we do, and vice versa. They really do support each other.
Plus, you get people like me who love to collect books. Absolutely. I'm going to come in. If it was just a new bookstore, I'm not so interested. But because you've got...
Yeah, and maybe along the way, you're there looking for to add to your collection, but there is something new that catches your eye just for fun, and it all works together. But used books, as I'm sure are quite their own world, in terms of learning what to buy and how to handle it and learning your customers. So I appreciate that it's not an easy just, if I'm a new bookseller, I'll just add this to my business.
No, well, particularly at the antiquarian end, I mean, you need a PhD to figure it all out. Yeah.
And we don't do a lot in that business. We do that mostly for fun. It's if those books happen to walk in our door or hop out of the box unexpectedly, we're happy. But agreed, that is a whole industry in and of itself that requires a lot of knowledge.
Now, but what I want when I come to a bookstore is really expensive, rare books priced really cheaply. Yeah. Do you do that?
We try not to. I don't know that we would be the most successful if we did that. But what I will say is when we have the really collectible, remarkable material, it's not in our best interest to keep it on our shelves, right? That's just money that we paid that's not going anywhere. So we certainly aren't trying to price it high or even particularly competitively unless it's something where we know it'll move quickly.
Right.
So
No,
come to
that's
us.
good.
I can't promise very cheap, but I'll give you a deal.
Okay. Now, you talked about your father and your grandfather. Tell me about your father first.
Sure. About his history in the business or just about our working together or anything?
Yeah, whatever comes to mind, really.
Well, we are a third generation family business, but it did skip around. My father is, I think, really the heart and soul of the company. To this day, he just turned 80 this summer, and he's doing what he did when he started, and that's buying books. It's what he absolutely loves. He is not happy if my parents take a long weekend. He wants to be in the warehouse, going through the pallets that we've brought in. And that passion lives and breathes in our business today, and it is really the center heart of our business. My grandfather was the one who I think brought the perspective because he wasn't a book person and he just enjoyed the fun of being in business. He liked sitting behind the counter every day and chatting with customers. And to this day, he passed away in the 80s, but people come in and talk about having known him, or Walter would give me the deal on this or something. And half of those stories are probably not true, or they're just misremembered, or, we can kind of set them out. But the point is that he loved just being in business and being part of the community. And my father brought the book passion, and I don't think we would be who we are if not for that collaboration.
Yeah, it sounds like a good compliment to each other, and one of the reasons for your success. Yeah.
And I would say they also both, they're related to each other, and they both brought values around what it means to be in business in a community. And that's, you give back. The business is not successful if the city is not healthy and thriving. And they both instilled that in me. And I believe it very firmly. We're not here just to sell a book and get what we can out of it. We're here, I talk about the umbrella of our stores. We're here to provide a safe place. We're here to provide a place where you can sit on the floor and read for the day and be unmolested. And I've heard from enough people over the years about how important that was to them, that they needed a place to go and they couldn't afford to buy anything. They couldn't afford a cup of coffee in the coffee shop. But the ability to sit there and read and be surrounded by readers helped them get to the next place in their life. And I believe we have to always make enough money to allow people to come in and not buy a damn thing.
That's wonderful. That really is a wonderful attitude, I think. In fact, you've sort of answered my question here. What does a bookstore embody for you?
It's a big question. I think we have a tremendous burden of responsibility that most retailers don't have. We sell something that really is about expressing humanity on a daily basis. You come in and you might be looking for a travel guide or how to repair your car or something. But if you keep coming, if we have what you're looking for, eventually you're going to hit on something that speaks to your sense of self, to your sense of worth in this world. And when you have that and you have a place to go that embraces that experience, that's really here for that experience, we have to keep living up to that requirement on a daily basis. And it's hard, but it's also extremely important, I think, and gratifying. So to me, a bookstore has to be many things. You have to be here for everyone. In this moment in 2020, that is a really tricky thing. It's got to be a place where you can access ideas and open your mind and broaden your thinking. It has to be a place where you can bring your children, where you can bring your grandparents. One of the beautiful things I find about book selling is most retailers are really for one segment of the population. Men go here and women go there, children go over there. If you're of this age, you do this. Bookstores are not like that. We're for every age and every walk of life, and that's an incredible responsibility, but also a real gift. So I don't know that I've answered your question. It's a very broad requirement.
Yeah, it's a big one. Just like books themselves, there's a book on every single imaginable topic under the sun.
And a million more left to be written that haven't been written yet. And I've been trained in for the most part, at most areas of our business. And I still remember very clearly being trained as a used book buyer and standing at our used book counter day in and day out. And eventually what you notice is people are bringing themselves to sell in a box. I take that responsibility for both just navigating the interaction so that they don't feel rejected, because that day I happen to have enough of everything they're bringing me, but also so they know I appreciate what they're doing and I appreciate what they read. And it's really remarkable.
That's a beautiful answer.
Thank you.
Okay, so what's the best book you've read on book selling?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I don't have a huge history of reading about book selling, often because I just find for us, we have to kind of feel our way through to doing it in our particularly unusual Powell's way. I will say the one book that I often end up quoting over the years, and it's not super up to date, Paco Underhill. He writes about shopping and the psychology of shopping and the experience of, if you walk into a store, it takes X number of feet for people to slow down, and then they always turn right, or if a woman's handbag brushes against something behind her, she'll leave the store within X number of minutes, So just thinking about the humanity of being in a shared public space while trying to find something you want, is a pretty fascinating area to me, because again, we're dealing with human beings. So they may or may not have come with something in mind that they're looking for, but certainly all of the people around them when they're in that store and all of the ways the shelves are organized or the signs are placed will have a huge impact on their experience and what they end up buying or not buying. So that's my favorite area in terms of studying book selling.
So what works best for you?
In terms of creating a store that is successful? Well, that's a tough question. Again, the mixing of inventory, certainly. I mean, for us, the most important place to begin is, of course, this sort of alchemy of what's the right book to put on a shelf. And, we're a huge space. We're a city block, in some places 4 stories high, and yet we never have enough space for our books. Talk to anyone who's in charge of any subject matter and they will say they need more room. So picking the right inventory for the right moment in time is where it has to begin. Then it's increasingly over the years become about giving a sense, when people arrive, that they have arrived. They are at a place that takes this seriously, that takes their visit seriously, that isn't just, oh, I happen to walk into a place and now there's a counter here and a shelf there, but that is very thoughtful and that provides space for people to have their own sort of movement and experience. So thinking very thoughtfully any longer about what goes where, how much space we allow. As an example, our blue room is our literature and poetry room. And a couple of years ago, we remodeled that quadrant of the block and we ended up spacing those bookshelves out more broadly, more widely, because we had just had more people in the store. We needed to create more room. It still feels wrong to me because there should be less space. And I'm a bookseller, I want more books. I want to be surrounded by them. But that was a conscious choice because we knew we needed to create a feeling of spaciousness to allow families and tourists more room to mill about and not, be elbowing each other the whole time.
So that worked, obviously, then.
That worked, yeah. We might go back if I get too stressed out about it over the next 5 years or something. But that's the space, that's the pace of things for us.
Do you have any other examples of what you've done that's worked successfully?
Absolutely. I would say always expanding the children's area is always a good idea. No matter what size, if we make it bigger, that's always better. It's over the years grown and now occupies the vast majority of one whole quarter of our main floor. And I'm sure it could take up more space if we gave it room. But never underestimating the reader, I think, is really always the answer for us that leads to success. So in this case, that means never underestimating children. They want to read. They want more things to read.
They want challenging books to read? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I just think they want more. You get a kid started, and what's more addictive than the idea that there are more books and more pictures, and so more spaces for them to pull things off and sit down at a table that's kid-sized. So that's been successful for us. For us, it's the other area of success is often moving things around. So not to confuse our customers, but to find new ways of putting subject matter together to refresh what's on the shelf, to take a moment to say, oh, maybe this doesn't need to be here, even though we always thought it needed to be. Maybe it should be over there. We get a lot of trouble from our customers sometimes because of how we name our subjects. We have a lot of subjects and they're often different depending on the store, but that's another area that's very important to us. What do you call something to help someone find the book they're looking for?
You have to kind of get into the head of the potential reader and make it as easy as possible for them to find what they want.
Exactly, that's right. So being willing to experiment and not say, well, these books have always been in this room, so they need to always be in this room. Well, maybe they don't. Maybe we need to think about a different pairing that would help someone find them better. Mm-hmm. You know, we're so big, but what we've realized over the years is customers don't shop the whole store. They have their sections, they have their corner, and customers are happy when they can find their books. So you need to get out of their way as much as possible. So we're always trying to get out of everyone's way. Like I said, connect the reader's ear with the writer's hand and not let our ego get caught in the middle.
Well, that speaks to another successful approach, and that is to make sure that the people that you hire are really smart about books, that they're book lovers, right? That's what pretty well everyone has said to me.
It's on the bottom of all of our job application. You know, if we're posting a job, it's on the bottom of all of our job requirements is must have a love of books and reading. Many of our folks are also lovers of writing, you know, so passion is critical.
How does that manifest itself then?
Well, it manifests in many ways. It's hard to sort of put a fine point on it. It manifests in all of our buyers are avid readers. So they know what they're looking in part because they've read so much themselves and know as an experience as a reader what it means to find the thing you didn't know you were looking for. So whether you're a new book buyer or a used book buyer, it means all the shelf talkers, you know, the comments we post on our shelves, but also on our website. It means when you walk in the door and you have a question and you're at the info station and someone says, oh, I'm looking for this book. I don't remember. It was blue. And I think it had the word horse in the title, you know, and maybe it's by, you know, this person, oh, right. That's, you know, I don't even need to use the computer to look that up. And I think it really manifests in a personal connection. If you need help finding something, someone is going to be able to help you navigate to your ultimate, the thing you're searching for in a way that an algorithm will really struggle, I think. And then I think it manifests, you know, speaking as the leader of the company and working with our executive team, it manifests in that we take our responsibility to the experience of shopping for a book very seriously. And that's because we've all had that experience of either being met by a sense of value and importance when we were looking for something, or because we've all put a book in someone's hand and knew that that mattered to that person in that moment, or that we hosted an event with someone that none of us liked, but we felt was our responsibility to free speech. You know, we take all of that very seriously from the top down. And if we weren't all book lovers, I don't think that would show up.
Anything else about in-store success?
I mean, I think my dad has always said it's one thing to love books, but you really have to love selling books. You can't want to hold on to that. This isn't our private, enormous collection, you know, so being successful in store is about being delighted to see the books leave. Not everyone is, you know, I think that's fair to say. In order to find our success, we have to find people who enjoy that process. So that's been important to us over the years. And we weren't always very good at it, so we've gotten better. We've gotten better over the years.
Well, delighted to recommend a book too. You know, if you're all excited about a book, you want to tell other people about it, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Or to start someone on a journey, you know, it's almost the best thing is when someone comes in who's not a huge reader, but they said, oh, I read this one book and it really got me going. What else? And how many hours do you have? I'll take you through a list, 3 pages of titles you should read next. That's really fun. You've got to love doing that.
Okay, I'm going to throw a quote at you, your own quote here.
Okay. I hope it's a good one. I don't know. Making me nervous now.
You know, it was good. I don't know if I've written it down here yet, though. Basically, what you said was that if we don't have a really good website, then we're going to be out of business in 5 years.
That's right. Yes, I did say that, and I believe it. I don't, we debate this within our own management team. Someone would say, well, we're not the best at being an e-commerce business, so why should we even keep trying? And I don't think we have to be the best. I don't think we even have to have a really, really exceptional website, but we do have to be competitive. We do have to meet our customers' expectations for a shopping experience online.
What is that?
Well, I would say, for example, right now we're not terribly good, online. We have a lot of inventory. Can you buy it from us? Yes. Do we make it easy? No. Do we reject your credit card? Does our PayPal link, work every time? No. And our customers are very loyal, luckily for us, and they will put up with a lot. And we're not trying to torture them, but we have to stop doing that. And on the other hand, it's extremely challenging and extremely expensive and extremely time and labor intensive to get there. I think I made that statement in part because as a modern internet citizen, we've all been led to believe that solutions should be instantaneous and should meet my needs instantaneously and be relatively low cost. And it's just not true. That doesn't really exist. It takes a lot of work to create something like that, and it may not be something actually in the long run we believe is worth paying for. But we have that sort of sense drilled into us these days. So I believe we have to find a way to have a competitive website, because the world is moving so fast, it will move right on past us, and we won't even have noticed if we aren't paying attention to keeping our technology at least comparable. And that's a big challenge, but it's one we have our eyes squarely focused on.
So by competitive, you mean that it's what? What do you mean?
I mean many things. I mean, if you put a title into our search engine and you type it wrong or you get the words slightly wrong, well, you ought to be able to find that book anyway. It doesn't mean I think we should get it right every time, but it shouldn't be that if you spell something wrong, you get no results or nothing even remotely like what you're looking for. That if you order something from us online, it ought to leave our warehouse within a couple of days, 3 at the most. I mean that our shipping prices, and shipping is a whole other topic these days, which I appreciate, but our shipping prices need to be fair. That doesn't mean they need to be cheap, but they need to be something that adequately represents the cost to us and the cost to the shippers and everyone doing the work to deliver it. And then it means the inventory, the process of finding a book, if you don't know what you're looking for, I don't want it to be like Amazon's at all. And I think trying to make it mimic an in-store experience is a bit of a red herring. But it ought to be easy, it ought to be entertaining, it ought to be interesting to find something in the way that it is in a store, just in a different way.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of work to do. And I think we're relatively unique in the kind of work we have to do to get there, again, because our inventory is so big and the way we think about it is so different than most. So I'm hopeful that getting there is actually going to be a really interesting and fruitful process, but it's a pretty daunting mountain we have to climb at the same time.
How big is your inventory?
At any given moment, we have about 3 million, titles, more or less, and then we partner with other distributors, so it gets quite a bit bigger from there. But we usually say we have about 1 million volumes in our flagship store, and then quite a few more in our warehouse and other locations as well.
It sounds to me like what you're trying to do is replicate that kind of serendipity of coming across a title that you would never have thought about if you hadn't gone into the bookstore. You want to try and do that online? That's
right. I mean, essentially, I do think trying to actually mimic the in-store experience is not really the point, but I do think mimicking the serendipity of discovery and sort of bopping along and looking at stuff and then having something surprise you, that's what we're after. Particularly if we can knit it with that, I know what I'm looking for. I know I'm looking for, a book on knitting that will tell me how to try this new technique, but I can't remember what that technique is called. That ought to work as well, and it ought to work relatively seamlessly with and I have no idea what else I want, but let's see what comes up along the way. And in my ideal world, that's more driven by our booksellers than it is by some magic computation.
Yeah. Well, we got to get those booksellers online somehow, and maybe in the future, they'll pop up and they'll be right there with you or something, who knows?
Well, and we try to get their expertise online as much as we can. There are lots of, staff writing about their picks or getting other folks writing about books they're reading. And so we try, but there's There's plenty of opportunity. Everything we're talking about now is just mind-bogglingly complex and expensive, and we're still an independent bookstore trying to do that. So we have to do it in a way that we can make work.
You've hired a new CEO?
That's right.
Did
That's
you
right.
hire him because of your decision to move away from Amazon?
No, I have a funny role in that I'm not planning on going anywhere. This is a lifetime position. And I've always believed it's really important to get out of the way when someone smarter can do, a particular job. That part of my responsibility is knowing where we need people and searching for those folks. And we had a CEO for 30 plus years who was my mentor. She retired a few years back, and I took over the reins in her absence because I really wanted to get in under the hood and kind of understand things without her. I find when someone like that leaves, there's only so much you can plan for. You have to just live and breathe the work every day and see, oh, I didn't even realize she was holding that up. Or actually, oh gosh, she was kind of slowing things down over here and I didn't, she was stuck and I didn't know that. And so I spent the last few years doing that work, but it's not my skill set. And so I had been speaking with this gentleman, Patrick Bassett, for the last couple of years, building a relationship, getting to know him and the way he thinks. And this summer he reached out, he'd seen some of the press about Powell's, and it had never occurred to me, I really believe in asking for help. I just didn't think in a pandemic anybody would want to come help, let alone that we could pay them to do that. But he said, I've seen all of the coverage of you guys and I want to offer my help if you'd like it. And I said, absolutely. He brings a tremendous skill set. I think I have mine, but his is very different in that he is very focused on the team and on the individuals on a daily basis and helping connect everyone in their brains through really clear communication and just moving us, down the playing field every day in a very thoughtful manner. Where I'm a big picture thinker and I want to get there yesterday. So we're going to be a good match, I think. But I expect, he will be here as long as I can have him. And then my job will be to come back in and do the same thing. So this is what I mean about I'll be here forever or as long as I can. I'm expecting to do a lot of in and out to make room for the right folks over the years.
So he's a team builder. That's the big thing.
I would think so. I mean, his background is in operations and finance, but he's worked in a lot of different industries. So I think what he brings is the ability to see something, we can't see the forest or the trees some days, depending, because we've all been here. I'm very proud of the fact that we have a lot of folks who've been with the company for 20 and 30 years. So he just helps us see our challenges a little bit in a slightly different way, if he can make the next couple of moves on the Rubik's Cube, essentially, it'll be a big win for us. So I'd say he's a team builder, but he's really about helping bring our own expertise together and connect it in just a slightly different way than we might have without some help. That makes any sense.
I'm just trying to think, like he looks at it and he says, what if we do, and maybe you can give me an example, if we do this with the way we order books, then we're going to increase sales by 10%. Like, is that what he's going to do?
I'd say it a little differently. So right now, what we're hoping to do, we can't live much longer if we don't open our stores somewhat more broadly. They're open, just our 2 stores are open very minimally. And we have to find a way to open, more days, more hours, more spaces, because right now our main store only has 2 rooms open. We have to find a way to do that safely for our customers, safely for our employees, but also safely for the business, because taking on the inventory to support more customers is an expensive and risky thing to do in this time. Taking on the cost of labor when we know that we might have to shut down again if the virus, spikes again in our community is a very risky endeavor as well. So what he's doing, for example, right now is meeting with a lot of different teams, helping really get their vision of what success looks like in a space, but also what the obstacles are. And then he's building some complex analysis to say, well, if we can only fit 50 people here and we have 5 people who need to be in a break room at this time, but the cost to the business is X, how are we going to twist this literal algorithm in this case to make this come out so that it's safe for people and safe for the business at the same time. So he's doing that by working with a lot of teams, and then he's putting it through his own brain and spitting it out onto a spreadsheet. Does that help answer?
Yeah. Okay.
And in the meantime, he's building trust and respect, and he's getting input so that people feel heard, which they should. You know, we're not successful if we're not listening to the folks who are doing the work on a day-to-day basis and confronting these realities. So he's also mining for really, really critical expertise at the same time.
Just for a moment, getting back to the city, do you think that America's phobia about anything approximating socialism, quote unquote, in other words, government and business working together for a better lifestyle for the population, do you think that's ever going to change down there, or there's always going to be resistance?
I live in a little bit of a bubble, right? Portland is generally quite liberal. So I think we have more supporters of that notion here than we might otherwise. I have to imagine, and this may be me being overly optimistic, but I have to imagine that there are going to be more stories of businesses like mine where the cost of being in business, despite being successful, you know, we have tremendous support from our customers. You know, if there weren't a pandemic, we'd have strong sales. We have a good brand. We have a great future in front of us. But the cost of being in business is overwhelming, such that we have to reinvent on an annual basis just to stay afloat. There have to be other folks that are going to encounter that over time. And I think, like us, we want to contribute to solving these systemic social problems we're all seeing. But if our back is broken in the process, we can't. So I think there are going to be more folks who want to come to that table. I just hope it happens soon enough.
What percentage of your business comes from the Portland area?
Well, it's interesting because I couldn't answer that question for you before this time, and I still can't really, but because we were such a tourist destination, and because Portland had really exploded as a tourist destination over the last, I'd say 10 years, it's really gone through the roof. And we don't gather data from our in-store shoppers. So I couldn't tell you who was from Portland and who was from Florida. I can say that on our online sales, about half of our online sales are in the West Coast and the rest are dispersed. And of course, mostly within that 50% from the West Coast, they're coming from the Portland and Oregon area, but Washington, California are big as well. But we'll find out is the real answer, because we won't have very many tourists. And once we can open our doors more consistently, I'll know. And I'm a little nervous, but I'm also quite excited. We haven't been a community bookstore in that way for quite a while. So the opportunity for at least a moment in time, just be here for Portlanders is actually kind of exciting. Not that we don't want our tourist friends visiting us, but it'll be nice to see our neighbors.
Well, and I'm just winding down here, so not to worry. This isn't going to go on forever, okay?
I'm happy. I go for hours, except that I have another meeting, but this is fun.
A big part of what James Daunt is doing with Barnes & Noble is allowing each store to reflect the community that it exists within. And I just wonder, what's the profile of the Portland population? Is that what you try to mirror in your selection of books on the shelves?
Well, first of all, I just comment briefly on Barnes & Noble and their new direction. I think it's terribly exciting. And, the more healthy bookstores in this country, the better for all of us. So I'm thrilled to see what he's doing. And I think it's the right strategy, allowing booksellers to be booksellers and really speak to their community. For us, it's a little different because we are so large and we do have a very passionate community. So it's not a small slice that we're speaking to. And that allows us to really go deep on a lot of subjects. I will say one of our longstanding jokes in the business from my father is if, Mount St. Helens exploded and buried all the bookstores in Portland, and 1,000 years from now they were excavating us, they would say, well, I can't tell much about this community, but they were clearly Buddhist. Because, booksellers tend to have a bent in a certain direction. So we've taken that story to heart and tried really hard to be as egalitarian as we can while also meeting, the demands of our customers. So we do have a large Buddhism selection, and we do have certainly a very large literature section. And as I said, children's is always good for us. But other than that, we try to really support our local community of writers and small press. Other than that, we have a very broad interest from our customers. So I guess the final answer is no. We really try to go for everything. As I said, not that this is what I think James Dunn or other booksellers do, but we just have never been served by underestimating our customer. So the more we can put on our shelves, the better we put on our shelves, the more broadly we put on our shelves, the more we see that positive response.
Yeah, I mean, if you can offer a deep selection within a huge range of, you're trying to cater to, as you say, every possibility, I guess, right?
And give the customer something to reject at the same time. Yeah.
Now, what about next generation? Am I being presumptive to talk about that?
Well, I have a almost 6-year-old son, so I figure we'll see, if he's interested. I wouldn't pressure him by any stretch. But on the other hand, I think this business is a tremendous responsibility to the community. So it needs to be stewarded, and it either needs to be cared for and stewarded by him or by someone. And in my role, I think succession planning has sort of been my responsibility since I was a kid, and it will be until I'm gone, thinking about the health of the company and who are the right people to help carry it forward. And I always describe my ultimate job responsibility as handing this business off to the next generation of readers. So in that regard, it's not presumptive at all. It's what I always have my eyes trained on. But at the moment, we'll just start with a new CEO and see where we can get in the next few years.
Okay.
Survive this pandemic, get to the next place.
Now, my final question, and this harkens back to my conversation with Bill Samuel, who was the grandson of William Foyle. When your son goes into the store and runs around and picks up a bunch of books and brings them back to you, do you allow him to keep them, or do you tell him to put them back on the shelf?
Well, my general rule is as many books as you want. That's fine. You can have as many books. Legos we'll put a limit on, or a cap, or, and we sell toys and gummy bears at our store. So, there's a limit on that. But books, I don't think there's any limit for us. I want to instill this, passion in him as much as I can, and the real respect for what his grandfather and my father built at the same time. So the more books, the better from our perspective. What did Bill Samuels say? That's what I want to know.
He said it was life-forming for him because of the fact that he went around the store, and because of the fact that he was allowed to pick out whatever he wanted and then take it home. He just loved and worshipped his grandfather. So I guess your son must worship you.
Well, I don't know about that. I still make him eat his broccoli, but I will say I had my own version of that experience, just going down to the store, waiting to go home with my dad, having hours to spend wandering around was a gift. And also I worked at the cash register with my dad often as a kid, and that was a gift as well. Being able to see what that was like and feel responsible with him certainly set me up for understanding the responsibility I have today.
Do you want other booksellers to do what you've done with Amazon? Do you want to start some kind of movement, or what?
I don't know that I would say that. I think every bookseller needs to find, the more booksellers, the better, first of all. So if Amazon is important to their success and survival, then God bless. I do want more shoppers certainly to think about when they're buying something, where they're buying it from. And I want our decision to, land in their brains along the way, hopefully. And I want other independent retailers to think about their choices as they partner with Amazon. So I think for me, what's more important is that we keep asking these questions. And then whatever the answer is, whatever allows a local or a small or an independent business to be successful is certainly the best path in the long run.
Okay. Have you said everything you wanted to say?
I think so. Generally, what I like to always add, and somehow never comes up in the course of the conversation, is just, I have an overwhelming sense of gratitude for our customers and our employees. This is a hard time to come to work right now. And it's always a hard time to come to work for an independent bookstore. We don't have the beautiful break rooms or the foosball tables, and you have to deal with, cranky customers from time to time, or books that come out of a dirty box, or we're not a glamorous world. So from our employees to our customers who have put up with us over the years, not always getting it right, always trying to do better, but stumbling along the way, I've just really grateful for their loyalty and their support and their kindness. Because of course we wouldn't be here without either of those folks.
Well, let me express my gratitude to you for taking the time to talk to me. It's been great.
Well, I appreciate it myself. This is the best part of my day, and you had great questions, and I appreciate that. It's been a nice conversation. So thank you for your interest and your curiosity about us.
Well, and thank you for being so specific. I think that makes a much more interesting conversation.
Absolutely. It's a lot more fun for me too to have someone who wants specific as opposed to, oh yeah, we sell a lot of books.
Well, I hope you continue to do that, and one of these days I'm going to get out and spend days and days in your stores for sure.
I hope you do, and I hope you'll tell me when you come so we can welcome you and show you around, and that'd be a real treat.
Very good. Emily Powell, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good talking with you. And you know where to find me if anything else comes up.
I do. Is it just powells.com or what?
Yeah, emily.powell@powells.com.